Oh, yeah. I'll be right back.
Okay, everything okay?
Yeah, I threw my hand out.
Oh. I didn't even process it. I told you where I am today. And normally I don't. We got season tickets to Broadway in Norfolk, and we went this weekend, and like most of the people were not very bad. And it's like, people, come on, it's not that hard. Anastasia.
I wanted to see that, but.
I thought the woman who played Anastasia was really good. Some of the other people were really good. I didn't like some of the ways they changed it from the movie. But it was fun to get back out there and like have a real date again, right? Like,
Didn't they make like another man that? Like something, I don't know.
yeah, so instead of having Rasputin, there's no Bartek, which like already is problematic, right? But yeah, so there's like a guy who's like a communist party higher up, who's like really fascist, essentially.
I think that was.
Give her a and a mic, and then I think. Yeah, and we buy tickets with like two friend couples, so we had dinner together afterwards. It's really nice. Alrighty, we'll go ahead and get started. So we only have a couple more slides to buzz through. I think that should take us 5-10 minutes. And then the rest of the day today will be for y'all to work on group stuff. I also have on the copier the skid that y'all can give to your partner if they're here. But you know, otherwise you can just use this for whatever group time. We'll have time after break. So you do that in pairs as well. So we had gotten to substance-related and addictive disorders. And so these are the interesting change here from DSM-4. So it used to be there was like substance abuse and substance dependence. And dependence was the worst one, right? Where you're actually dependent on it. But they combine them. And so now there's just a substance use disorder. Substance-induced disorders are where a substance makes you have symptoms of another disorder. So you take LSD and you have hallucinations, right? And it's not because you're having hallucinations, but it's just, yeah, that actually caused it. Thanks for doing that. We were all joking about how none of us noticed you weren't masked, so we're really on it today.
Oh, just that all the way back to the car.
We appreciate it. You can have diagnosis for if they come into the ER, say, and they're intoxicated, right? That's obviously a temporary thing. If they're in withdrawal. And then we can also look at like medication-induced disorders as well, right? So things like overdosing on opioids, things along those lines. So then it's just defined by which substance you are using problematically. And again, just using one of these substances does not make you have this disorder, right? It's where it starts to really interfere with your life. Either it's getting in the way of work or family, things along those lines. You're engaging in reckless behaviors because of it. So alcohol, people are always surprised by both caffeine and cannabis. It's rare, but caffeine can cause psychological issues if you get too dependent on it. It does have withdrawal effects. If you've ever not had coffee for a couple days in a row and you get a big headache, That's withdrawal from caffeine. Cannabis, a lot of people, like, even I remember when we were in grad school, one of our professors didn't believe it, and we're like, it's literally in the DSM, right? But people tend to think of this as just sort of a, oh, it's a fine drug. It's fine, you know, again, as long as you're not smoking it, so then you can still get like lung diseases if you smoke anything. But if it takes over your life, if you're using it so much that you're just like sitting around eating Doritos and not going to work, right? That's interfering with your life, right? And then hallucinogen, inhalants, these are like poppers, yeah, like spray paint, things like that. And then opioid is the big issue, right, in the US. And a lot of evidence to suggest that the drug companies sort of intentionally fueled some of this, which is obviously problematic. And yeah, especially in places like Appalachia, you know, on our western side of the state and into West Virginia, huge issue where people were just exploited and got addicted, essentially. And then sedative, hypnotic, or anxiolytic. So these would be things like benzodiazepines, things along those lines, which can be addictive, Valium, things like that. Stimulant-related disorders, cocaine, meth, yeah, that is another huge one. Yeah, Adderall, people using uppers for street use, you know, like prescribed medications for street use. I don't know if this is still true, but when I was on my internship in 2010, Charleston, South Carolina, no, sorry, Charlottesville. No, what is that name? The big thing, Charlotte, Jesus, in Carolina, is actually like the South hub for meth, or was it that from the time? Which, like, wouldn't know that, but there you go. And then tobacco-related disorders. And then they're starting to put sort of other addictive disorders here. So this was sort of like their first time doing this. It's like a gambling disorder here. Some people have suggested that maybe we need to ponder like internet or like online gaming type disorder here. Again, just use of them doesn't make you have a disorder. It's when, again, it takes over your life, you're spending all your money on it, things along those lines. All right, neurocognitive disorders. Again, this is a reframe for DSM-5, where we now talk about mild and major neurocognitive disorders. As you can imagine, major is more severe symptoms. When you get into major neurocognitive disorder, you get to the point where, like, you might not be able to live independently. You might need help with things like basic toileting needs, for example. So you can have this due to a whole host of disease, Alzheimer's disease, frontotemporal dementia, Lewy body dementia, vascular dementia, traumatic brain injury. So here's where we started to get into like CTE, right? The stuff we've been thinking about with the NFL. Right now, we don't have a way to diagnose this with an autopsy, so it's harder to diagnose someone in life. So, but we can do it with TBI, right? Substance or medication induced, HIV. So when HIV turns to AIDS, and especially late stage AIDS, you can get neurocognitive symptoms that look like Alzheimer's, essentially. Luckily, we have such good antivirals now that most people who are adherent to their medication, who are HIV positive, never get to that point. Prion disease is related to, what is the name of that disease that comes from cattle? Cannot think of it, but it's not rabies. Mad cow, yeah. I wanted to say hand, foot, and mouth, but that's not it at all, right? But yeah, so it can be related to that. Parkinson's, that's resting tremor, right? It's a genetic disease. And then Huntington's. Huntington's is also sometimes called Huntington's chorea, which translates to dance, because like their whole torso will sort of twist in these movements that they can't control. All right, the personality disorders we already kind of touched on, but I'll get into a little more detail here. The paranoid PD, just what it sounds like. You kind of think everyone might be out to get you, or at least not supporting you. Schizoid, you start to get a little strange ideas about people, maybe not wanting to be around other people. Schizotypal is kind of like just a step, a breath away from being into one of the psychotic disorders. It's more like you might see illusions rather than full hallucinations, so it'll look like the wall is breathing or something like that. The cluster B personality disorders are probably the most commonly diagnosed. Antisocial are psychopaths, sociopaths, diagnostically you think it's the same thing. And so these are your serial killers, your people on Wall Street who don't care how they're ruining people's lives, things along those lines. Borderline PD is the one I've seen the most. This is often related to trauma and often like repeated trauma. They have an unstable sense of self. They have really unstable emotions. They tend to engage in self-harm behaviors, and those can be cutting, burning, things like that. But they can also be other self-destructive behaviors like alcohol use, purging, things along those lines. And they also tend to like put you on a pedestal one moment and then make you sort of the bottom of the barrel the next. Histrionic, I always jokingly describe as musical theater majors. I have a friend who is a musical theater major, so I feel like I'm joking a little bit. But they are just like, they need all the attention on them and they do like dramatic things to get it there. Narcissistic is just full of themselves. And it often, both histrionic and narcissistic often have an undercurrent of anxiety under them. Avoidance is like it's a twist on social anxiety. So in social anxiety, you want to socialize with people and build friendships. And sometimes you do have close friendships, but you struggle because of your phobia. With avoidant PD, you actually like don't care if you have friendships with other people, right? So it's a different feel. Dependence is again exactly what it sounds like, where you're overly reliant on other people. I had a client with dependent PD traits, and like she was in her 40s, and her husband just like gave her an allowance and things like that. Yeah. And then OCPD is fastidiousness, needing everything in a certain order, certain way, very akin to like type A personality. So it's like everything's going to be done and done right and done your way. I had an OCPD client, and like rather than go out to dinner with her friends, if she had laundry to put away, she had to stay at home and put it away. And she had her closet organized just so. And I remember one of my first sessions with her, she's like, I have a 2 strikes and you're out policy. And I was like, that's not even how baseball works, right? So yeah, she was great. Oh my gosh, she came so far. And I don't know how much of it was me or just the therapy, but she was fantastic. It was fun to work with her. All right, paraphilias or paraphilic disorders. These are the sexual disorders that are socially unacceptable and often include things like non-consensual aspects, right? Voyeuristic disorder is being a peeping Tom, right? Taking that to the extreme. Exhibitionistic disorder is getting off by flashing people, right? Yeah. Preteristic disorder is like taking that to the next extreme where you like rub yourself on people and public. Yeah, it's gross, right? And like, you know, take advantage of situations like crowded subways, right? To do that. Sexual masochism and sexual sadism. I always have to put a little caveat here that if you know anyone who's into BDSM and it's consensual and they have safe words, that is not this. Similar to if you know anyone who is able to use a drug or alcohol in a safe way, or you might yourself. That's not a disorder. These are where sexual masochism is where you get off on causing people pain, you don't necessarily make it consensual, right? It could be very dangerous. And then, that's sadism. Masochism is where you get off on the pain being caused to you. And again, that can be self-harming, right? Pedophilic disorders, what we used to just call pedophilia. It is sexual attraction to and acting on sometimes kids. And this, even before I had a daughter, this just like makes me sick to my stomach. And when I was seeing patients, I worked with a lot who had survived childhood sexual abuse, and it wrecks you for life. So pedophilia and antisocial PD are nice examples of disorders where, I said a lot of the DSM has, like, if you're distressed and it's causing distress, it doesn't matter. It's like, you are causing distress to others, we don't care if it bothers you, right? Fetishistic disorder is where you're like only able to be turned on by a fetish. Again, if you're like into some kinky stuff, no judgment, right? But like shoes or, opposite sex underwear or feet or whatever, and that's the only way you can get off. And again, it's distressing to you, right? If it's not, like, when you find a partner who's into foot stuff too, go for it, right? And then transvestic disorder, people often get confused with like people being trans, and it's not that. These are people who specifically get sexually aroused by cross-dressing. Okay, so it's nothing about gender identity and everything about sexual arousal. Okay, so that's thumbnail sketch. We're gonna skip by the role plays and the 5 axes because they don't exist anymore. The DSM does have a decision tree that will help you to make these diagnoses, and these 2 slides just show you how we represent those in different ways. So, maybe someone has an adjustment disorder with depressed mood. On DSM-4, you would put their avoidant personality disorder on axis 2. This one doesn't have any medical diagnosis, but they are going through divorce. And then that's that global assessment of functioning, 0 being not functioning well at all, 100 being like, you probably don't need therapy right now. In the DSM-5, we would just list these 2, and you just list whatever's affecting them the most first. Sort of what's the primary diagnosis. So something like a personality disorder, which we used to throw on axis 2, might be first. Sometimes insurance will influence this choice. Sometimes what you put as primary is what you know insurance will cover. Is this sketchy? No, if the person has that diagnosis, right? You kind of operate as you can within a managed care system, right? So like I had a client that I saw who was going through divorce, and like, were we not in a managed care setting, we probably would have just diagnosed her with the adjustment disorder. But because we knew her insurance wouldn't cover that, we looked further back, and she met criteria for persistent depressive disorder, even though that wasn't her primary complaint. So we diagnosed her with that because we knew the insurance would then cover her therapy as her primary. So it's part of the total assessment process. And again, y'all will get the chance to do the skid with your partner. I'll go grab those off the top here in case anyone does want to do it today. If not, we can do it after break. And it gives you good pieces of information about your client. Alrighty, so the rest of the class today, you have for a work day. So you can get with your group. If you want to like run around campus and collect data, you can do that. If anyone is ready for SPSS, I can go computer lab with you. Or if you just want to like catch up on some other stuff, assignments you need to do for the class, you can do that. Or to be perfectly honest, if it'd be most beneficial for you to go like pack to go home for Thanksgiving, that could be your work day. So I'm gonna hang out. I'll go get, just in case anyone does want to do it, I'll go get the skid copies off the copier. Yeah. No, I forgot, and I'm sorry. And I can't print from here because I still have my docking station at home, and they're probably not supposed to, but it's.
You can do like print it out.
You can just print it out yourself, and if, or if you want to just type on it and submit it on Blackboard, that's fine too, whatever works best for you, so I apologize. But if anyone does want one after break, just shoot me an email over break and I'll bring you a break.
And also the exam, when we get our grades, like, if I come out of my paper.
Yes,
Okay.
yes, I apologize. It's just the conference got to be a lot this weekend. So I literally have them with me and the key. And so my plan while y'all are working is actually to go get those and start writing them. So you're welcome. Elijah, have a great Thanksgiving. Elijah and Stephen, I'm going to close out the Zoom. And then you guys can use this time however you need. All right, so I'll